Today I want to talk to you about the states of evolution of a soul, according to the theory of evolutionary astrology by Jeffrey Wolf Green. And I want to talk to you about it because I get a lot of emails from clients who often ask me, but I have this great positioning in my chart, like why is my life not great? Why is this great thing not happening for me? And the answer is like, the fact that there is potential in someone's chart doesn't mean that they are going to actually achieve that potential. Sadly, it really depends on your self-consciousness and on your awareness. Like, how much do you actually work on becoming a self-aware, conscious human? If you work on that and your level of consciousness is high, your chart is going to manifest itself in the best possible way. But if you don't, then it's going to be more the shadow sides of your aspects that are going to manifest in your life. That given, it's not for sure that somebody will achieve this is Carl. Hello. Somebody will achieve the full potential of their chart. Like, you just have to decide to work on it. So when I see a chart, there is basically at least 4 possible ways to interpret it according to the 4 defined levels of self-awareness or consciousness that exist according to evolutionary astrology. So that means I have to make a very quick psychological assessment of the client and see on which state of consciousness they might be, and then I start interpreting the chart on that level of consciousness. But if it turns out to be wrong, like the things that I say do not resonate with the person, then I will switch it up and I will start interpreting the chart from a different level of consciousness. Now, you must be very curious what those levels of consciousness are. Now, they are called the evolutionary states. And they are the dimly evolved state, the consensus state, the individuated state, and the spiritual state. Now, they have very different percentages of people in them. Most people on this planet still in this stage of our evolution are in the consensus state. So that's about 70% of people, the large majority. Then we have 20% in the individuated state and 4 to 6% in the dimly evolved and the spiritual state each. So let's start with the dimly evolved stage. Here we're talking about souls that have a very limited self-awareness. They can only perceive literally their own sensual awareness, the time and space that they are in, and not much more. In our language, we would sometimes or often classify those people as mentally challenged or retarded, or having specific disorders like mongoloidism. But really they are just in a dimly evolved state because they have either just inhabited a human body for the first time from coming from plant or animal lives, or due to karmic factors they have actually de-evoluted. So they have gone back evolutionary to live a more challenged life. And there's a big difference between the souls that have evolved from plants or animals and the ones that de-evoluted, because the ones that evolved from plants or animals still carry that energy, that very pure, very naive, very innocent, very loving and caring energy and personality. And the ones that have de-evoluted, they often carry a very strong anger within them, and they enjoy causing disruption and disturbances because they are so frustrated with this humiliating limitations that they now face in this body. The main desire of this evolutionary group is to become normal, to become like the others, so like the consensus state. Now, the consensus state, they are fully present mentally and have a fully evolved brain. However, they also have a very limited self-awareness as to being only able to perceive what has been served to them by the mainstream societal norms that they live in. So they have a desire to conform to the consensus of the society, and they are simply incapable of extending their values or their sense of reality beyond the society consensus. They have a very high sense of self-righteousness that is born out of conformity. They feel strong because they are the same and they are a lot, and they feel very self-righteous in what they believe in. Their main desire is to get ahead. So they are in this society that they conform to, but they want to get ahead. They want to be on top of that society. So born out of that desire is the evolution that happens in this group. And the evolution comes because in order to get ahead in this society, they have to develop an understanding of the others, because they want to dominate the others. So to do that, they have to become aware of the society they live in. They have to become aware of their values, their moralities, their religions, and see how they can gain a more sense of personal freedom, how they can gain more material belongings or more recognition, which is mainly what they want. So in this very state, people range through all social classes. Usually if the consciousness is very low, they will be born into a very low social class, and as they evolve, they raise up. So having developed awareness of the others and the community that they are part in, also other countries and other communities, and being able to see the differences, they manage to get ahead. They manage to climb up the social ladder, and once they have really dominated and understood how powers and psychological manipulation and warfare works in this society, they even rise up to politicians, CEOs, and important business people in this society. But still, their only sole desire is to dominate and to get ahead of others. They have still not really overcome this. This is why in our world there's so many wars, because the people that are leading this world, they still operate from a very low consciousness, and their only desire is to get ahead. Once you have completed this stage, and the stage is always completed by exhausting the desire. That means when the desire is fulfilled. So when this soul feels like they have now finally gotten ahead, they are on top of society, then the desire to get ahead is exhausted. And what comes is a feeling of emptiness. And they start to ask, there must be more than this. So this is when they terminate the cycle of being part of the consensus group of evolution, which, by the way, correlates to Saturn in astrology, because Saturn is about our societal norms, about restrictions, about rules, about structure and conformity. And they start developing an individuality, and they start progressing to the individuated state of evolution, which is ruled by Uranus, right? So now their main desire becomes to discover who they truly are without taking things and values and beliefs and morals from the outside for granted. They start to rebel against the consensus state because their desire is liberation and freedom. Now, instead of accepting everything that the society serves them, they are like, no, thank you, I will think for myself before I make up my mind about this. And they always have the sense that they're different. They don't know how, but there's always this sense of not belonging and being different. And they usually will start first by detaching from the society or the country that they have been born in or that they lived in, and trying to gain a sense of individuality. But once detached from their country and their society and their family, they will realize that they still feel different and they still feel not belonging, until they start connecting to other people who are in the same stage of soul evolution. And then, only then, they start to feel like they belong, and they start to understand what they need in this life. And what they need is to resolve the question of what reality is and what it is not, and what I am and what I am not. So this stage is fueled by a lot of experimentation and investigation and other ways of looking at reality, at the nature of life, and understanding everything. Inside of the individuated state, there's also a path of evolution, and it goes like this. In the first stage, they come straight out of the consensus state, so they start feeling different on the inside, but on the outside they're still trying to compensate for this feeling of being different on the inside. They still continue having a normal job, having normal friends, doing normal things, but on the inside this feeling of I'm living a lie gets stronger and stronger. So eventually they secretly start seeking out books, they start seeking out YouTube videos, content, they start seeking out events, places, environments where people infuse them with new and different ideas, until they reach this next stage where they start viciously rejecting everything that the consensus society is. So now they are complete rebels and they have to be that because they still have a very high fear of society absorbing or taking away that hardly one freedom that they have. Finally, when they re-stabilize and they validate themselves and they confirm this new identity, then they are not scared anymore of society taking away their freedom, and they are ready to integrate back into society. But the way they integrate back is they come back as thought leaders. They come back as people who are clearly different, but different in a good way. People who are recognized as having a gift and being able to propel the evolution of society forward. So they come back into usually high positions and usually never go back to employment. They start doing their own businesses, they start helping the others evolve, and on the inside now they have accomplished this pondering about the nature of life and of existence. They have understood, they have integrated all the beliefs, the religions, the societal norms, and they have understood that they all have the same baseline, so there's no more separation in their head. They don't see Islam and Christianity as two different things. They don't see men and women as two different things. They just have integrated all the nature of creation and existence, and that becomes who they are. That's the essence of their consciousness now. From there, the next stage is the spiritual stage. This one correlates to Neptune, right? The dissolution of everything material. And the only desire that remains here is to know, not just to mentally know and to believe in, but to really know and understand the source of all things, or so to speak, God. So this soul already has access to incredible amounts of information, to their past lives, to the Akashic records, to collective consciousness, and their identity is their soul's identity. So it's not anymore this ego identity that they created in order to live in this world, but it is the eternal identity. They are fully aware of the natural laws, the law of attraction, physical laws, the spiritual laws, and they can, so to say, already manipulate and work with the will of all things. They are the most conscious and most powerful creators in this world. So that is the stages of evolution. Now, your chart really represents your core being, but you decide how much ego and fakeness and adjustment to societal expectations you will put on top of the true core, which is represented in your astrological chart. So the more you put on top of it, the less your chart will really show. There are some people who act completely against like everything that is in their chart, and me as an astrologer, I cannot predict the free will of a person. I cannot predict what you will do, and nobody can. And if they say they can, then they're lying. But a person has free will, and the free will that we have is to decide from which level of consciousness we will live, and if we will live according to our true nature or not. So if you feel like everything in your life is going like against the way it should be, and it's going against your chart, then you really need to check back with your true self and find that, and ask yourself how many things you have only done because society wanted you to, or somebody else expected it of you. You need to find back to that core self of yours in order for your chart to play out in the best possible way. I want to give you a small example of this. So we're going to look at a chart together, and I'm going to tell you how you could interpret the chart from a consensus state of evolution or from a, let's say, highly individuated state of evolution. So, for example, this chart, we can read it from a consensus state of consciousness, which would mean this person doesn't have a lot of awareness of her environment or others, and is mainly very self-righteous. In that way, Pluto in the 7th house can represent abusive relationships, can represent power figures that this person is always trying to get with in order to get a benefit in their life, but in the end those power figures keep abusing them, and because they have this main desire to get ahead as consensus state consciousness, so they will always try to use other people. That's what it comes down to. If your only desire is to get on top of others, you will use them. So when they try to use people, it will backfire, and they will actually get abused. So all the relationships will be very toxic, usually with a partner that is very dominant and very powerful, which they wanted because they thought it will bring them ahead, but in the end it will pull them down. And that is further confirmed with the Venus in Scorpio in the 8th house, which is the downfall of Venus. So the love of this person is going to be murdered and massacred, basically, because they try to use others instead of stepping into their own power when they, or if they would have an individuated state of consciousness. So the same aspect, let's say with an individuated state of consciousness, can represent a very strong and karmic and deep relationship. With Pluto in the 7th house, this person would probably be alone most of their life because they would look for this one deep soul partnership. They wouldn't just go with anyone. And once they found it, it would be an osmosis of energy, like a true melting of two souls. And there would not be any abuse because there would not be any hidden power dynamics or hidden motives behind the love. When it comes to work, we're looking at the 10th house now. This person has Neptune, Sun, and Mercury in the 10th house. It starts in Sagittarius, but is mainly in Capricorn. For me, this would be definitely a high status doctor, somebody who's extremely who is extremely successful in their job, maybe even works like internationally, but even like with Capricorn there and the Sun, they maybe, if they are in a highly evolved consensus state, they will even have their own clinic or be like the chief doctor in a very renowned clinic. But there's a lot of recognition, and the medical field could definitely be a field that they're working in. Now, if this was an individuated state of consciousness, this person would not be interested in climbing the social ladder or be recognized. They would want to start their own business, and they would want to do that in a Neptune kind of fashion. So something related to spirituality or arts or music, could be the field of entrepreneurship that they follow. Another thing, let's go to the 12th house. Now we have Moon and Jupiter in the 12th house. From a consensus state, this can play out really, really difficultly, because the 12th house is about our inner self, our subconsciousness, our spirituality. And in the consensus evolutionary state, there's very little space for all of that energies. So they become suppressed. And if there is a lot of them, like there is here, because the moon represents all of our emotions, and then here they're amplified through Jupiter. And if that all gets suppressed, this through a consensus state of evolution will be interpreted as mental illness. So this person, if they do not manage to evolve beyond the consensus state of evolution, they will be labeled as mentally ill. But basically what is happening is that there is just a lot of clairvoyant and spiritual energy that is being suppressed because the consciousness is not ready to express it. Now, if this person was in the individuated state of consciousness, then probably they already would have done several therapies, and several spiritual practices would be part of their daily routine. They would have known meditation. They would have been in touch with themselves. So they would have found a way to express this energy, maybe even through their work, because in the individuated state of consciousness, they are more likely to have a spiritual business. So they would be probably highly clairvoyant, and have a very, very strong connection to the spiritual world. Also very strong dreams, since the 12th house is the house of foreign lands. I think that would be the only way to save this person from being a psychiatric case if they are in the consensus state of evolution. They could escape onto an island or escape somewhere into isolation, onto a different continent that is surrounded by waters. And there they could live in their consensus state of evolution without going crazy, because they would be very far away and very detached from their societal norms that they adhere to. And possibly that alone would already propel them into evolution, and they would enter a different state of consciousness, but it's not sure. Yeah, so this is an example of how a chart can play out in completely different ways depending on how evolved you are. So if you're facing struggles and you feel like things are not going the way they're supposed to go, and your chart is not indicating any of those struggles by transits or by directions, then you need to check yourself, and you need to check your own state of evolution. If you're not going to therapy, then don't even come to an astrologer. If you're not doing any self-work, that's the first thing you need to start. Don't complain if you're not going to therapy. Like, I do not even accept clients who don't go to therapy. You need to have a basic level of self-awareness. And if you want your chart to play out really well, you need a really high level of self-awareness. So that's from me. See you next video.